You have to do the activity, but you have to do the activity correctly to get the result. The two are tied, but you're not paid for the activity. You're paid so the file can be found. And the person gets correctly routed for the reason they called the company. And you can go on and on. You say, well, it goes back to Alice in Wonderland and the rabbit. I'm late, I'm late for a very important date. Hello, goodbye, I'm late, but didn't know where he was going. You know, when anybody sets out to drive from Tucson to Los Angeles, they usually have a date and time when they want to arrive and where they want to arrive. But they still think they're paid for driving there, not for the arrival.
Yeah, and it's just been uniformly difficult with some people to get them to understand that for example, if you have let's look at baseball, for example, and some of you are baseball fans and some aren't. So I'm gonna try to keep this simple, but pretend that in baseball that there's an averages, your batting average is the key differentiator between what you get paid and your results. So if you look at a Hall of Fame, you look at a second baseman, a Hall of Famer bats 300, and that means when you talk about batting average, that means out of 1,000 at bats. So you have a Hall of Famer, world class, 1% of all baseball second basemen batted 300, and then an average got 300 hits of every 1,000 times up. An average second baseman he gets 280 hits. Pretty close. I mean, that's only 20 difference, but he's average. And then a below average and someone that doesn't last, let's pretend for this example, they get 260 hits out of the 1,000 at bats. So the person that is a Hall of Famer, average, and a guy that gets fired there's only 40 hits out of 1,000 at bats that determine that. But the person that bats and hits 300, he gets paid $10 million a year. The person that bats 280 gets paid $2 million a year. And the person that bats 260 gets the minimum wage, whatever it is, $1 million a year. So there's a huge differential. Doesn't it make sense that you should be paid more based on your success level? And I've just been unable routinely to convince most people. I have been occasionally successful at convincing people you get paid for the results that you achieve. But overall, people, no, I worked this hard. Another example before I get into that is in a basketball team. You have a professional basketball team, but I'm not sure, but let's say there's 12 guys on the bench. Well, 5 of them are starters, and they average 30 or 40 minutes a game. And 4 of them are first fill-ins, first substitutes, and they average 20 or 25 minutes a game. And then you have 2 or 3 that don't play a minute a game. And there's only 500 players in the whole national the NBA, National Basketball Association. And if you're one of those players that is sitting on the bench, you're one of the best 500 people in the world. And it's understandable that you should think you should be paid well. But if you're not a starter and changing the results of the game, then you're not as valuable as the starters who are more impactful on how the team performs. And so, again, I called Bob and I said, can you give me any advice on how to change people's attitude into understanding that you get what you pay for? And so you've found less than 5% or 10% of the people understand what they get paid for. How do you try to explain to them and convince them what they do get paid for.
Well, the example I use in doing that is a phone call. When most of us get a phone call, we simply listen to what the person's saying. I was taught a long time ago, and those of you who have had phone calls with me, you'll have experienced this. I will say, if it's our first phone call, I'll say, I hope you don't mind, but in order for me to listen better to you, I need to have you answer with me 3 questions. How much time have you allocated for this call? What are 1 or more of the results you expect at the end of the call, and why are those results important to you? And if you can share with me those 3 things, our phone call will be very productive. So if they say, well, I have 45 minutes and the end result is I want to seek a solution to X, and the reason it's important to me is I can't move forward without having that resolved. Now I can listen to you. I say, go ahead and talk about it now. But you can train people to be result driven. It doesn't mean they will be, but you can train people by techniques like that. And when we hold meetings, we very seldom state the end result of the meeting. We have activities we're going to discuss, we're going to go over, we're going to review, we're going to talk about. We never have the end result about which we're going to talk, discuss, and go over and review. And I think one of the most obvious ways that our culture is activity driven is we have to-do lists rather than to be done lists. And I always think it's interesting to turn a to-do list and scratch it out and put to be done, because we are activity driven. I want to go to the gym. Why? It's an activity. I need to go to the grocery store. Why? I need to call 5 people. What's the end result? We just don't train people to be, and I have to do my homework. Why? We just don't train people to be result driven. And so if you're not result driven, it's hard to have an owner mentality. It's hard to own an activity. And that's why personal goals are so important in business, with finding and training people to have an owner mentality, because a job usually is a means to personal ends. And if there are no dots connected between my personal goals for income and lifestyle and wealth and equity and getting rid of debt, if that's important, if there isn't a connection between my personal goals and my business goals, going to work is going to be an activity.
Let's talk about a little bit more about results and the way that I try to convince people. And I'm sorry if I use too many sports analogies, but again, back to the NBA players. There's a dozen of them. Do you think that the people that are the starters work harder each week, more hours each week, than the people who are not starters? The people
Absolutely.
that make 10 million.
And they seek the advice and counsel of others on how to get better. Absolutely. So
what's the differentiator there? I mean, why do they go that extra mile? Because the difference between extraordinary and ordinary is a little extra. Why do they go that extra mile? And they say there's very little traffic on the extra mile. But what is it that makes them do that?
Because they live by the difference between dissatisfaction, which they have occasionally, and being unsatisfied, which they always are. As soon as you're satisfied, growth stops. As soon as you're happy with results in business, progress ends. You always have to be unsatisfied. And that doesn't mean you're mad or angry. It just means you're not satisfied. You look for opportunities always. The dissatisfied person, or the person who's comfortable, doesn't grow.
I had in Jackson Hewitt, our mission statement was improving each day, setting the standard, improving each day, and have some fun. And that's, it was funny that one year I went to my staff, my senior staff, my executive team, and in their annual review, I said, well, what did you do how did you improve this year? And out of the 8 of them, Bob, guess how many came up with anything substantive?
Some of them may be on the call, so I don't want to answer.
Well, it was long ago, and that was at Jackson Hewitt. So there may be one or two that are on the call, but zero. And
Yeah.
I heard lame things like, "Oh, I read 2 books,"
Yeah.
but that's an activity. That's not a result, as you talked about. It's the key, and so I think that I learned with your help that the commitment, the understanding of what you get paid, but the understanding of getting results is one of the things that differentiates people that act like owners that act like employees.
Absolutely.
And if we could, in our company, and you said the average company has less than 5%
Yeah.
of employees that act like owners, what would happen in the country or in the company? Let's say we were smart and found the formula. It was a slow formula, but we found the formula. So it would go from 5 of the 100 employees act like owners, and then 7, and then 10, and then 12, and then 14. What do you think would happen to the results of the company?
Well, it'd be exponential growth year over year.
So it's kind of a secret sauce, right? I mean, it's an elixir. It's an incredible. If someone could invent the proverbial magic wand and change employees into owners, thinking like employees into thinking like owners, it'd be invaluable. Is there any company in this country that couldn't benefit from that, from having more employees that act like owners?
No.
Not
And
any
they
large.
they would pay premium salaries for those people because they'd get a high return on their investment.
Yeah, and they would be worth the premium salaries because they'd be making so much more money.
Yeah.
And building so much more net worth.
And
So
yeah.
let's talk about, you're interviewing someone or talking to someone, and how do you identify some questions or some things to look for in their past that can help you identify those that are going to act like owners?
Well, let's see if you've asked this question of somebody, because you and I haven't had this specific conversation. Give me an example of a job where you were completely satisfied with the job, even though other people may not have been satisfied with what you were doing. Give me an example of why you were satisfied in that job and happy.
Can you tie it to any experience in the past? I mean, one of the things that I get a little frustrated with people when I interview them, I often ask them, what was their biggest achievement?
Mm-hmm.
And have you ever asked people that? What's your biggest achievement?
I have.
Right.
I have.
There's an answer that most people would think is a great answer that I just hate the answer. And tell me if I might be totally wrong. I've never asked this. Okay, fire away. What is
it? When people say my children.
Right. If they say their marriage or their children, that's totally a turnoff to me, because that's not an achievement. That's required. I mean, that's required in life by God and prosperity. That's your assignment, and it's totally subjective. Is it possible you could have the greatest child in the world at 14 that turns into a monster at 19? Right?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
so it's a subjective. I hate that. But in any event, right or wrong, I don't like that answer. And if someone says that, and I don't tell them at first, what is your greatest achievement in business? But then I fall back into, okay, I don't tell them that I hated their answer, but I do tell them, I do ask them, what was your greatest business or sports achievement? And are there certain things, do you think, that would trigger certain answers? Do you think that would trigger Okay, then that person's thinking like an owner. Am I stumping you? Yes.
No, I was thinking you opened this up to the.
Oh, yeah,
group.
this is not only open up to Bob, this is open to the entire group. Do you have any, thank you. Do you have any answers to what you would ask someone and they would answer that you said, yes, this person understands results? And because there's certain things that wouldn't be, right? Like when I was 9 years old, I was on the swimming team and I got a ribbon for being in 9th place. Right. Would that make you think that you were talking to someone that understood that your success, that your biggest achievements are results?
Well, were you 9th out of 300?
Okay, right. That'd be better, right? But I hate, and that's another thing I hate is I had to buy trophies for my kids, and these $25 trophies when they finished 17th place, or the team finished in an 8-team league, they finished 8th, or in 8 teams they finished 8th, and I had to buy them a trophy. I don't think they're encouraging people to measure results. But is there something? Is there some achievement that they could come up with that was, aha, that's the person that's going to act like an employee?
Hi, John, this is Karen, and I typically don't comment on these calls because I just think you guys are so amazing. I'm afraid to sound really stupid. But I think if you ask me that question, one of the answers I would say is I won a national award for the most improved state in XYZ. I'm not going to go into the details, but that was an accomplishment that I had. Made me feel really good about myself that I got a national award nationally. So that would be a response that I would give you.
And you act like an owner, so that seems like an accurate analysis.
Well,
But Karen, you've interviewed dozens and hundreds of people in your career. And if you think back of the few that acted like owners, can you think of questions that you asked that would elicit that from them?
I mean, I guess I'd have to replicate what you just said. What was your best achievement in business? And I don't think I would have ever said sports. I might have said business, but I would also look for personal achievements. And I think one thing that, if you know me, anybody that knows me, it's attitude. And I would ask them some kind of a question that I could elicit a response from them to find out what their attitude is, because attitude to me is everything.
Awesome. Go ahead, Bob. Others, do you have questions that most of you on the call are in that, if not all of you, are in that category of when you've been employees, you've acted like owners?
Hi, John and Lauren. Hi, Anne Lauren from Canada. I think a good question to ask, and I've used in the past, is for an employee to explain their situation when they're dealing with a difficult client. So a client who's maybe a little bit assertive or who's angry or frustrated, how are they going to handle it? An employee may say, oh, I'm going to call my manager. They may defer that concern or issue to someone else. However, someone who's going to act like an owner is going to immediately address the issue on hand and try to defuse and bring that client down to a more calmer spot. So that's a really good scenario, is ask them how they're going to handle difficult clients that are coming into the workplace.
Excellent. And let me build on that a little, and thanks for your comment.
You're welcome.
My philosophy is just learn how to say yes. And most people I've found, and as I've aged, the service in this country and even in Canada seems to get worse and worse. And it seems to me people just find ways to say no, and people are looking for ways to say no. My philosophy is just say yes. Find a way to say yes. And in fact, I invented with my son, who was a rowdy a young man that got punished virtually every day for a decade, but he was, I invented a system to say yes by saying, or say no by saying yes. So I've always since then, and so this is 28 years ago. So 28 years ago, I invented a system to say no by saying yes. And what I mean by that is he wanted to play football, and he was slight, and he was a great athlete. He was great at soccer and basketball, but he was very slim, and he didn't weigh 120 pounds. And you know that how big the football players are out there. And his mother especially was concerned that he would get hurt. So he gets to be a freshman in high school, and he wants to go out for the, so Danny wants to go out for the football team. And so she said, no, you can't go. I mean, just typical, find a way to say no, right? And I said, well, so I said, I came in and said, well, here, we'll make you a deal that if you can, I mean, can you make the honor roll? Oh yeah, easy, easy. Now he was a BC student that had never made the honor roll. And so I said, this is my thinking, that I said that if, I'll tell you what, I'll make you a deal. If you make the honor roll, you tell me you can do it. If you make the honor roll, the last semester before football, you can play football. Knowing full well, I mean, think about all the facts I knew. He had never made honor roll. The semester before football is June, and football doesn't start until August. So he's not going to be thinking ahead, and he's not going to be planning ahead. And we're not the bad guys, right? If you say no, if you say no instead of here's a find a way to say yes, right? Here's a find a way to say yes. And so many societies changing into policies to stop giving guidance to employees to satisfy customers and treat people like people instead of like again, policies. So anyone else had successful questions you've been able to ask to elicit and find out whether someone's going to act like a employee or an owner? Or Ryan, you've always acted in your career, and you've been self-employed now with me for 20 years almost. So, and you've been an employer of hundreds of people. But when you were an employee, I would guess you acted like an owner. And what were your characteristics were different than the rest of your team?
John, I mean, I always wanted to do what I thought was best for the company at the end of the day, and I always wanted to do what was right, what I thought was right at the end of the day. And it was more of, and you've said this before, is that, policy trumps rules. I mean, it's one of those things where I want to say, or principles, I should say, principles trump policies. And if someone is really principally oriented and is motivated, I think they're going to do the right thing more times than not. And that's what I try to look. That's what I did, and that's what I look for when I'm trying to hire someone.
Yeah, that reminds me of a story, that one of my favorite stories about principles and policies. And as Ryan said, I preach and look for principled people, and not when I teach my staff, and I teach to the world that whenever you have a policy and a principle, the principle always overrides it. And one of my favorite examples was when I was at John Hewitt, and I let the CFO enforce a rule, or he put in a rule that the franchisees could only call his accounting department from 2 to 4 on Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. So one of the accounts payable clerks, a franchise somehow snuck through at like 4:15, and she said, "I'm sorry, I can't talk to you." And so she hangs up on the person. I mean, that's not principle, that's policy. And that's not what you do to franchisees who are valuable partners and customers. And we had invented. I was so I'm so much a believer of principle that we invented a principle pad, where you had a pad tear off sheet that listed the 10 principles, and when you saw someone that violated a principle, you wrote them up and said, this violated the principle, and you handed it to them. And when you saw someone that exceeded a principle and lived up to a principle, you handed that to people. And so because people hate to criticize and hate the conflict, 2/3 of the sheets that were handed out were positive. And you would go around people's offices in the organization, you'd see them hung up at the wall, especially if someone like myself gave them that, right? The CEO gives them that. I noticed that they were principled. Well, in this case, my daughter, who was incredible employee, top executive vice president, she wrote up the clerk, the accounts payable, and the CFO went crazy. It was down in her office, and because I guess principles didn't mean as much to him as policy. So that's an important way of differentiating the policy versus the principle.
And John, I have a question now that we started out with, to ask somebody, what have you done in your previous jobs to affect directly or indirectly the creation or retention of a customer?
The creation or retention.
Mm-hmm.
And what would be a good answer that you would say, yeah, this person gets it?
Well, I would just, I don't want to put any words in anybody's mouth, but to me, if I don't know that I'm paid for either the retention or the acquisition of a customer, then I don't really know what business is all about. And the other thing that I think is good to ask people is, what do you think? 3 things. What do you think the reason, the purpose, and the result of a business is? And most people will say the reason is to make money, the purpose is to make money, and the result is to make money. And, as Drucker said, the reason is economic performance. And the way you achieve economic performance is the purpose of the business is creating and keeping customers. And the result is a satisfied customer. Because you don't want to create and keep dissatisfied customers. A good example of that is if you live in Atlanta or Denver or Houston or Dallas, and you fly, you could, one of the airlines that's dominant in that hub can create you and keep you, but it doesn't mean you're satisfied. So just creating and keeping customers doesn't mean that they're satisfied. And the only way you can perform economically is by creating, keeping, and retaining satisfied customers. And if people don't know that in an interview, they aren't owners, because that's what you really own in business. You really own customers.
I use a different phrase that means almost the same thing. Yours is more expansive, but I talk about tax preparers, and the word or the phrase tax preparer that's not who we're looking for. We're not looking for people that prepare taxes. Their job isn't if you ask them what their job is, they would say typically 90% of my thing, wouldn't they say tax preparation, to prepare taxes? Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
But what I tell them, no, you're not a tax preparer. What you are is a customer retention. You're responsible for customer retention and referrals. That's your
fanatical
right.
Fans is what you
right.
like.
Right. And that's how you get retention and referrals, right?
Yeah.
You have retention and referrals that's your job. Preparing a tax return is only a part of that job, right? It's the banter, it's the eye contact, it's when they come into the office, the instant recognition. It's offering them a water or coffee. The whole thing is an experience, and it comes and that's the result you want to get. But the result, it's very measurable result. What percentage of your customers come back, and what percentage of referrals do you get for that taxpayer. That's clear result.
Absolutely. And that's the job, I think, that's the job of business owners, to get people to come back and work for them, is to become customer centric, as you've always preached, and to become technically competent, be a great place to work so everybody contributes to the creation and retention and satisfaction of customers. Because I remember attending an opening of a Walmart I was invited to, and as the doors were opening, the manager came on the speaker system and said, "We're about to open the doors. Let's remember that the people coming through these doors are the only reason that we can pay mortgages and send kids to college."
Awesome. Let me add to that with a Walmart story that I love to ask this question in the interview, and no one's ever got it right before. And so I'm going to ask it to the group, and knowing that I've already told half the group the answer. So you guys that have told the answer, Michael Chadwell, can I call on you to, I haven't told you the yet, Chadwell, can I call on you to answer this question? It's a hard question.
Sure.
but you can't be horribly wrong. So can you agree that, can we agree that both Walmart and Kmart are different, that one's incredibly successful and one's a failure? Is Walmart?
Yes.
So Walmart's very successful, growing, and Kmart is getting ready to die. They married Sears to die together, right? So,
yes.
So if we looked at, and this has been going on for 20 or 30 years, right? They've been going in the same direction. So if we look at the top management of Walmart and the top management of Kmart, what's the difference? And are the managers or the management at Walmart, are they smarter? Are they more experienced? Are they more educated? And they're not, right? You can buy the most smartest person. You can buy the most educated person, right? So you can buy the most experienced person. So that's not the difference. The difference between the executive teams is not intellect or experience or education. So what's your thought on, and I told you it was a tough question, what is the difference between those executives of Walmart versus Kmart?
Probably the way they treat their customers with
Okay.
product. And
It's more than that. And that's not untrue, but that's a result of the important thing. Anyone else?
Yeah, I have
Anyone
some
else?
input on that. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Kmart for the last 15 or 20 years has been in a survival mode, where Walmart has been in a growth mode.
Anyone else?
Hi, well, I think there's a lot of drive and ownership in the two different areas. I would say Walmart executive team has a lot of drive, a lot of ownership, as well as the company's policies and procedures. There's a lot of drive to be number one, to be successful. Whereas Kmart and Kmart, I believe, we don't have that up here anymore. But they don't seem to have the drive or their ownership in their business. It's like they've plateaued. They're not
also
satisfied, and they're satisfied with being in their place. Whereas Walmart never seems to be satisfied. They're always, even though they're so successful, they do not seem to be satisfied. They seem to always be, facelifting their image and changing their brands and adding new product and finding ways to, have the customer go through their stores faster and quicker and the new products that they're implementing. So they seem to be always dissatisfied, not to be satisfied. Like they're.
and I use that one word to describe that, and that's culture.
Culture.
Culture. And they have a culture of which is success and positive attitude. And they have the best system. And to have the best system, you have to be committed to improvement. And you can't have the best system today isn't going to be the best system tomorrow. To have the best system, to have a great culture, you have to be committed to improvement. And so that's part of the culture is, as you described, a commitment to improve. So we've given you a lot of information on hiring and who to look for and what type of employees. Comments or questions?
One other, John, one other distinction that we can talk about more down the road, but here it's relevant too, is people do not know the difference between the business they're in and the industry they're in. And the industry you're in has very little to do with customers. The business you're in is to create, retain, and make very satisfied customers who return frequently. You can, if you have that understanding of business, you can be in any industry and be successful. The tagline for Amazon, to create a business that people cannot live without, is a focus constantly on customers. And when people don't know the difference between the business they're in and the industry, they're not going to be as successful as if they know the business they're in.
Yeah, I call it exceeding customers' expectations. The Stan Phelps, who wrote a bunch of goldfish colored stories, the purple goldfish, the yellow goldfish, the green goldfish. In the purple goldfish, he said, you never arrive at a meeting or a party exactly on time. If the meeting is 1 p.m., you're either come in early or late. Almost no one arrives exactly at 1 p.m. And he said in the same vein that you never meet a customer's expectation. You rarely exactly meet their expectation. You either fail to meet it or you exceed it. And so that's the job in any industry, in any business, is to exceed expectations better than, not only better than your competition, but in improving numbers. Other
Hey, John.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is Mufid. How are you?
How you doing?
Good, you're looking good. Thank you. Yeah, one of the things I'm learning about companies or big companies, and I think one of the topics that you held in the past, which was one of your favorites, was going from good to great, and that's still a big question. It's still a huge thing in any industry, in any success. And one of the things that I'm learning that I was hearing Shaq and talking about, he's a multi entrepreneur, and one of the things that he focuses on to continue to be successful and be more successful in the future is when he spoke with Jeff Bezos, which is Amazon. He told him, I have to be in the business of changing people's life in order for me to stay in business. And I thought that's a huge statement. And just saying it makes a lot of sense. But that's one of the things I'm actually digging into to learn more about what exactly how he changes people's life. What are the criteria? What are the things that he focuses on to change people's life to allow his his $1 trillion company to stay on the horizon, continue to be successful. Do you have any or something that you can talk about in the future?
First, I'll let Bob, do you want to take a crack at that before I do?
Well, I just know that having fun changing lives is the mission statement of loyalty.
Say that again. What's the mission statement of Loyalty Branson?
Aren't we having fun changing lives?
Yeah, how many Mufid, how many companies do you think have a mission statement that is, not only is it just 4 words, that makes it memorable, but it describes what we do. And actually do you remember our first mission statement, Bob, before this one?
I don't at the moment.
I think you invented this one. Didn't you invent having fun changing lives?
I doubt it. I probably just was influenced by everybody, but yeah.
Someone came to me and our mission statement was having fun, exceeding expectations.
Yeah.
And I thought it was you that said to me, well, or someone said to me, well, that's not inclusive enough. That's not inclusive enough. So we changed having fun, exceeding expectations to having fun, changing lives.
I was one of the people that said that, yes.
I thought you were. And, you know, I'm pretty sure I invented this phrase. Thank God it's Monday. TGIF. You know, the world goes by TGIF. And I think you need to find employees that are looking forward to going to work. Because if you're not looking forward to where you're going on Monday morning, you go into the wrong place. So TGIF. And that's one of the things you look for in these exceptional employees. Other thoughts, questions?
John, this is Karen. So you've talked about hiring and retaining great employees and the challenges that we're facing now because of what's going on in the world. Have you ever talked about or thought about or shared your ideas on how owners and the executive team and the leaders of a company, when you're talking about customer centric, including your employees in the philosophy that they're a customer? So an employee is a customer, or am I on the wrong track? That the employee is a customer of the owners and the CEO and the management team and the leadership team.
And that's a great point, Karen. In too many companies, the CEO, the executives, they talk down and they look down on lesser employees. And you know, the reason that our company is called Loyalty Brands is that we have extraordinary loyalty in our organization. We're only 3 years old, and I have a dozen people that have been with me 20 years or more, and 6 that have been of those 20, or 6 of them have been with me 30 years or more. So, and the only way to get loyalty is to give loyalty. And and we can come up with many examples of how you show loyalty to employees. But this struck me as a bit humorous last month when I was having lunch with a owner of a company, and he was lamenting that he couldn't get loyalty from his team. And he said, and I said, well, I gave him the example. Wow, I've been very successful. I have all these people that have been working for me. I mean, 400 or 500 hours combined, or years rather, of people working for me. He said, well, I have the old time employees. I have the old ones, but he just said, I can't keep the new ones. And then he said, for example, he said, I had a new employee who started to work on August 1st, and about September 15th, she asked to take a vacation for a week. Can you imagine? He said, can you imagine that she asked to take a week of vacation? And I said to myself, to me, that wasn't even a thought. It would be automatic. Yes, take a vacation. I mean, to me, there would be no thought, but he thought it was abominable that someone within the first 2 months would ask to take a vacation. And we believe, and I believe, Karen, that if you work for me, you got to make me happy, but I have to make you happy too. This is a two-way street. I don't get to be, you're not a slave. You get to choose, and we both get to choose. And I believe in servant leadership. Other thoughts, questions? One last question. I'm going to tell you, if you don't ask a question, I'm going to tell you a story of how I tricked my oldest daughter into working for me. Okay, my oldest daughter, extraordinary. She was a receptionist when she was 16. And she was the best receptionist we ever had in the tax industry at all the companies I've ever been with, all the 4 national companies I've been with. She was best ever. And she went to college to get her degree in marketing. And we were just being changing the name from Mel Jackson to Jackson Hewitt. And and we were expanding from 100 offices to 300 offices. And she was in her senior year at college. And I overheard her ask a question: "Are you going to work for your parents when you retire?" Because my ex-wife worked with me too in Jackson Hewitt. She said, "No way." And so I tricked her, and I went to her and I said, the start of her senior year, maybe it was December, but it was sometime in between August and December. I said, I have an offer for you. How would you consider taking your last semester off? You got to promise to go back in the fall and finish up and get your degree, and working for us around the country, teaching the Jackson Hewitt method, because she knew it very well. She was a great, incredible receptionist. She knew all the office procedures. And so she said, yes, I would love that. And so she comes in and worked perfectly. She came in and she went around the country and taught the system for us. She came back at the end of the tax season. She still had 5 months before she started school to finish her degree. So she worked in the training department. And then she goes back and gets her degree, ends in December, and she came to work forever for Jackson Hewitt. So, I mean, she worked for over a decade at Jackson Hewitt, became a vice president. By the time she was 25, she was handling the Walmart account. So just another way to identify the right person and encourage them, convince them of the dream and get them to work for you. Okay, we have to go. We'll look forward. We'll talk to you in next week, same time, 2:15. Thank you for your attendance and have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thanks.